This is Dale Matthews, and I'm joined by Mike Jones, and we'll be talking this time about the Dimmick Tower. The Dimmick Tower refers to a building that used to be a hospital on Dimmick Street, in Grants Pass, and it no longer has a hospital in it. And so because they're concerned, it's county property, because they're concerned about things like asbestos in the walls and the lead shielding for the x-ray machine and everything. It couldn't just be demolished and start over again. They determined that building inside this kind of building, this sort of laid out in a sort of goofy way, that or single-purpose way, that they would need to tear the whole thing down. They came to that scholarly conclusion, and so then what they did was they looked for a bidder that was capable of taking on the project.
Right.
So it wasn't set up as a project where the lowest bidder would get the contract. The county decided to set it up in a way so that the most experienced bidder would get the contract.
And I mean, I understand that to some degree, considering that there's asbestos and stuff like that involved. However, certainly there are more than one or two contractors that have that capability, and the idea that money isn't a consideration there, well, I guess that's just so goes government.
Well, as it turns out, the money isn't a consideration, and we'll talk about that. That's what the controversy is about. What happened was, as the commissioners are standing out on the sidewalk and looking up at the building and counting the number of floors, it's really easy to see that there are 4 floors. However, they put the whole contract out and saying that there were 3 floors. Somebody made a mistake. Several people, highly paid people in the county, probably $1 million worth of salaries, and they can't count. Now, again, we're not talking about differential calculus here. We're talking about arithmetic. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, did they think that the 4th floor would just be left there hovering in midair?
Well, I would wonder, did the contractors not visit the location? I mean, to bid on it on paper. Now, is it a known fact that someone or several people in the county sent out paperwork saying that there were 3 floors?
That's what they say that they did. And they also say that the contractors were required to make an on-site visit to say, all right, given what's actually here, this is what we're going to do, and this is what it's going to cost. And also keeping in mind, as professional contractors, that they would know for sure, they've probably seen this every time, that the client, the people paying you, may not have a clue about some things and may be wrong about other things.
Sure.
So
wouldn't be the first time.
No, so they come and they visit the site, and they count 3 floors also. This isn't a hidden floor, by the way. This is just, there's 4 floors instead of 3. And so they bid on what it would cost to deal with. Now, we're not talking about, it would be different if we're saying, well, we're going to rip up the floors of 3 of the floors, and then maybe they would think the 4th floor is not going to be ripped up. No, this is demolishing the whole building. So right. You're not going to demolish 3 out of the 4 floors and say, well, I understand. No, there's no understanding this. It's just a dumb mistake. It's a stupid mistake. And it just recently was discovered.
Yes, and it sort of would make you suspect that they knew they were dealing with a government entity and they didn't visit the site and they just did the thing on paper.
Well, no, we know they visited the site, or at least according to the commissioners, we know that they did, because they've said over and over and over again, well, I'm going on a site visit with X and I'm going to do this with Y. And so they've been giving us and Simon Hare has been talking about what a great project. It's his project. what a great project this is. He's been beaming about this because this, in comparison to what Cheryl Walker's been doing, looks like a great success. So it's a big, in fact, they've got a live camera on it where you can watch people milling around. There's not a lot to see. There will be in a couple of weeks, but so he's very, very proud of what they're doing with this and of taking it down and doing it safely. Then we find out that they've miscounted the number of floors, so it's going to go in combination more than $100,000 over budget. But except they say, well, don't worry about that. See, they actually got the old CFO. I was so grateful to see her gone, but now she's back. They got Rosemary Padgett involved back in this, and it turns out that they say, well, don't worry about it because it's all within the budget. How can it be within the budget? $100,000 cost overrun? And
Yeah.
do you remember how they keep telling us how they're at bare bones? They can't afford any more police officers. Everybody is leaving the cream out of their coffee. They're being
We're hitting the wall. We're about to go over the fiscal cliff, and any other sort of analogies they can come up with.
But here's $100,000 cost overrun, and they're just shrugging. Well, okay, is that within the budget? It certainly is. Oh, okay, well then that's all right. Now, a little bit more complicated than that, as it turns out. The money has been given to us by the state, so it's coming out of one pocket and it's going into the other pocket. I mean, we still pay for those. And they knew ahead of time the state was giving them too much money. See, I don't like that part either, but that's me. And maybe you don't like it either. How many times does the state do this? So this county was going to keep the amount that was too much. Well, they'll say that's okay because now we'll get a chance to keep less. Yeah, but now it won't go into our budget for other things. So why are we happy? Oh, well, look, we have a cost overrun, but it's still, the state's still going to pay for it. No, first of all, we're still going to pay for it. The state it's going through the state, but then we don't have that extra left over that we were counting on to do for other projects, other kinds of things. So this is not a happy tune we can sing because people were too lunkheaded to know 3/4 from floor.
Yeah, it's odd. I mean, this sort of situation just makes me long for the days where perhaps we didn't send so much money to the state and they didn't give us so much money back. And if we had a building to tear down, well, we tore it down ourselves, or we had a local contractor do it, and it was much less complicated, much less expensive, and a whole lot less red tape.
But the commissioners will say constantly, well, that's Dale Matthews and BadCounty.com and other people get up here and they criticize us. We're doing a great job, a bang-up job of running this county, and you can trust us because we're at bare bones and we're being very careful with everything. Hey, this is a perfect example. It's mathematically proven, and it's not hard math, 3 versus 4, and they're screwing it up. And this is Simon Hare's centerpiece project of his entire time in office. He said so. So that being the case, we're supposed to now trust them with everything else. Oh, if you'll just give us this money for law enforcement, well, we'll see that we take 10% off the top for ourselves, and then we give the rest of it to law enforcement, even though you thought they were going to get it all, and even though some of us have said they will get it all, they won't get it all. We'll take 10% off the top for paper and toner and things like that, and we're going to spend it so wisely. Why don't you believe us?
Well, and this brings up another thing. I really wish that we would go back to putting, carpenters and truck drivers and things like that in the commissioner position. People who've had to work in the real world, and have them be there for a short period of time, and then go back to their life in the private world. And because these people are politicians. And what they think is smart is obviously somewhat less than that. And
No, what? Tell me now. So you're in the position of a contractor, and you're going to bid on this contract, and you already know the client can sometimes be wrong. You don't confront them with it, but you set them on the right track. Now, what kind of contractor is going to write this thing up so that? And the first question that occurred to me when I heard this is, well, obviously you go to the contract and you say you did not do what it says here in the contract. Well, according to the commissioners, are now ex 20 years with the same legal counsel, Steve Rich. He approved the contract, suggested that they sign it, where, according to them now, there's no solution to this because the contract is written in such a way that the contractor doesn't have to have their feet held to the fire. Can you talk about that a little bit? What?
yeah, that seems kind of odd to me, and I wonder who informed who that there was another floor in play here. Um, I would think that if I were the party awarding contracts to people, and I often am. I have to have building contractors come in and bid on build outs for commercial space and things of that nature. And if such a glaring error took place in a bid, I would say, well, I've awarded you this under false pretenses here, and then we're going to have to re-examine this whole thing now, and we're going to have to make sure these other contractors knew that they were bidding on 4 floors instead of 3. I mean, that just seems like how you would do it.
How did we agree to a contract? I'm not talking about 3 versus 4 now, but how did we agree to a contract that we written in such a way that there's some huge problem like this, that there's no recourse, and that we've got to eat it?
Well, okay, and that's a good question, and I'll tell you that recently, if you remember the 7-county IGA thing, it was very, very obvious towards the end of the hearing that day, which was the weekly business session, that Simon, and perhaps none of the other commissioners as well, had read the paperwork. So it may well be that they don't give they don't care about reading the paperwork. They don't care about reading the contract. All they want is the credit for having had the building torn down, so they can put that on their resume.
But Mike, we get a lot of criticism. Why, you guys are so negative and everything. Well, here's one reason why we might consider at least questioning our government, and they're on top of us all the time. Well, where are your solutions? See, we're not paid to do this. And so if you've got people, when you add them all together, it's well over $1 million worth of salary that we're giving these guys, and this is the way that they perform. And
Right.
we end up with a contract where there's no solutions to something that's terribly wrong. And now here's the bottom line part of the whole thing for me personally. Once they discovered this, and they agreed with each other that it didn't matter that they went $100,000 over, oh, that's okay, that's within the budget. Then Simon Hare said that he felt that the commissioners should not bring this to the public. What?
Right. Yes, because it's embarrassing. I'm sure if it were a commissioner board decision, he would have said the same thing about the sexting scandal. But listen, I'm glad you brought this point up about people being critical of you for being critical, and the thing that strikes me there is, as soon as they go to as many of the meetings as you do, then they can critique you on that. But the thing is, they don't know. Many of these people are people who never show up at the weekly business session, or are there sporadically. So they really don't know in great detail what's going on with the county. But Dale Matthews does know. And if you want to be critical of him, please do your own homework as well, and perhaps then you'll have some credibility there.
Well, I never ask you to say such things. It's very nice of you. I do appreciate it. We do try to keep track of what it is that the commissioners are doing, and you would not know this by a decision of the commissioners if we weren't telling you about it, because they decided among themselves. Here's the end of the show. They decided among themselves that you didn't need to know this.